Hello, good morning and good day to everyone who's logged on to our Selling Online course. It's very exciting to have so many people joining us from all over South Africa. Today's course and webinar that will take just over an hour to cover is brought to you by the UK SA Tech Hub and implemented by the Loudhailer team. I myself, my name is Caitlin Nash. I'll be facilitating today's dialogue with two phenomenal industry experts who are here today to help all of the entrepreneurs in South Africa to scale by using digital sales tools. This webinar series is a three-part series, and that means that today is really the start of a conversation. If I could just ask everyone to on. So today is the first of a three-part webinar, and it's an exciting conversation. I think over this time of COVID, there's been a number of entrepreneurial support initiatives that have come out. Now, further down the line, we found that entrepreneurs are really looking towards advice, guidance on how to implement virtual mechanisms to sell. And we're hoping today we'll start that conversation with everybody who is participating and listening. Right, so first things first, in the comment section, it would be phenomenal if you could all type where you're from, what your position is in your company, and your sector. So this morning we had some guys in the agricultural sector saying they'll be looking out for this webinar today. I hope you're online. We saw you on Facebook tagging us in this morning. Thank you. We will be going through all your comments, so please don't hold back. We'd love to see if you're a solopreneur trying to learn how to scale digitally. We'd like to know if you're in retail sales, or you're a big company. Maybe you're in charge of marketing. Maybe you're the CFO looking for new revenue channels. So just make sure you're putting everything in the comment section. We're going to use all that information to tailor the following workshops to be as useful as possible for this community. Right, so we didn't just wake up and think, everybody needs to sell more online after COVID. The SA UK Tech Hub conducted quite an extensive survey with entrepreneurs around South Africa and a lot of the small business hubs that support entrepreneurs. And what has really come through is outside of finance, which I think has been dealt with quite extensively over the last few months. Entrepreneurs are looking and saying, right, things have changed. My customers physically not as close to me as usual. Or perhaps we all have more time behind the scenes, or perhaps we're starting new businesses and we're starting virtual businesses. So today's conversation, we can be very, very proud that we have two speakers, two leaders within our industry who can support us to learn more about this. But before we do, I'm going to introduce Shirley Gilby. Shirley is the CEO of the SA UK Tech Hub, and she is an inspiring, highly energized woman who's passionate about helping digital entrepreneurs, particularly here within Africa, to create successful businesses so that we can all flourish within our economy. Shirley, good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Hi, Caitlin. Thank you so much for that amazing introduction. And welcome everyone to the first of these online workshop series. I am really, really pleased to be able to work with Loudhailer on these. So thank you very much to the Loudhailer team. I'm excited for the workshops to come. And as Caitlin said, we've tried to give some real thought to what it is we're wanting to support you with. The work of the UK SA Tech Hub is quite broad. We work with entrepreneurs who are aspiring and want to establish businesses, right through to those who have newly formed businesses and are trying to find their markets, right through the value chain to established technology companies that are looking to scale, to raise funding, to find commercial opportunities, and to grow outside their borders. But COVID has changed a lot for a lot of people. And while many entrepreneurs believe that they actually need more funding, the truth is all entrepreneurs need more sales. they need to find their customers and be able to connect with them. And a lot of that is now happening in quite a low-touch environment. We've had to move online. COVID has fast-tracked the change from a very physical engagement model sometimes to something more online. So I think for that reason, we were particularly excited to kick off this workshop series with this particular topic. And yeah, I think from my side, that is I think enough from me. We've got some amazing facilitators, and Caitlin is hosting us today, so thank you, Caitlin. So I will pop myself on mute and enjoy the session. Thank you very much and welcome.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Shirley. I think it's really important. You've heard from Shirley. She's South African. She's got this phenomenal mandate from the SA UK Tech Hub. And we're really here to listen as to what you need and how we can support further as we grow and support this community. So really be as active as you can be on the comments today. Here's our agenda. We're going to be looking at what is e-commerce so that we're all preaching from the same book. And then we're going to be looking at e-commerce and the Groupon story. We all remember Groupon. It's certainly the e-commerce market has evolved here in South Africa, but Groupon certainly was an icon a few years back. After that, we will be working through some of the questions that come through on the comment thread. So please keep them going. We'll wait right until the end and then we'll unpack those questions. But as you have them, shoot them through, and we've got a dedicated team member having a look at those in the meantime. Right, a few rules. Please keep your mic off and your video off. Nobody can see each other's faces, and we all have different working environments. Some of us have kids and dogs in the background. So do us a favor and make sure you are on mute. Right, questions, as we said, put them through the comments part, but we'll chat about them at the end. The session is being recorded, so you will all have access to it to share with colleagues and friends. So don't hesitate to ask us or to follow the future correspondence. You get to access it again. Right, now let me introduce Loretta. Loretta is currently the head of communications at the eCommerce Forum. I think it's a privilege to have Loretta with us today. Loretta, you're looking fabulous. I can see your video, which is wonderful. I think you're still on mute though. So I'm going to let Loretta introduce herself. As you can see, her bio is on the screen for those who want to have a read. But let's hear the voice of the woman who's going to talk us through e-commerce for the next 5 or 10 minutes. Thanks, Loretta.
Thanks a lot, Caitlin. Thanks for the introduction. I'm Loretta, and I'm a marketing and communications specialist. And at the moment, I'm wearing the hat of the head of communications at the eCommerce Forum Africa, but I'm also heading up communications for the eCommerce Forum South Africa. The eCommerce Forum Africa is a Pan-African organization that is basically member-based with a lot of platforms sitting on the board. I'll explain a little bit about what platforms are as part of my presentation. But it is basically a lobbying organization in terms of looking at the Africa Free Trade Agreement that is being discussed at the moment at the African Union. Where e-commerce is a factor in how we're going to do business come tomorrow as Africans and as South Africans. The eCommerce Forum South Africa is a platform for SMEs particularly who don't know exactly what to do when it comes to e-commerce, don't really know regulation, how it works, how it impacts on them, and most importantly, how to actually get that e-shop up and running. So yes, that's me. Right, I think I'll get straight into the presentation. I think all of you are probably asking yourselves, what exactly is e-commerce? It's the latest buzzword. You know, everyone is saying, yes, you know, I'm in e-commerce, or I'd like to be in e-commerce. What exactly is it? Well, the whole idea of me being here is to simplify things. I mean, I don't want to use jargon that is complex and complicated and make myself sound intelligent. The whole idea here is to share with you exactly what e-commerce is and how it can be of benefit to you. So let's start with the actual definition of it. There are quite a number of them. And sometimes I will not refer to the slide that you're looking at and rather speak from just my experience. But let's define it. My favorite definition of it actually is e-commerce is commonly known as electronic marketing. That's pretty much it for me. It consists of buying or selling goods and services over an electronic system such as the internet. Now, when we say such as the internet, I don't think there's anything else but the internet. So let's just say it's selling of goods and services on the internet. That's the basic definition of e-commerce. The next question would then be, what types of e-commerce is actually out there? Now, we start saying B2B, B2C, B2G. It sounds sexy, but what exactly are we talking about? And where do I fit in the ecosystem of that? So we start with the first one in terms of a type of e-commerce. B2B, that basically stands for business to business. What does that mean? So I run a business and I sell products in bulk. Let's say I'm selling yarn. So I'll be selling bulk yarn to other small stores who then buy smaller bits of my yarn. So that is a B2B type of transaction. So I'm selling products as a business to other businesses. Now, most of e-commerce is in B2B. So that's pretty much where an average person with an e-shop would not be. But it is significant if you are a business that is running, having big products that you're selling that could be resold elsewhere. So that you'd be categorized as participating e-commerce under B2B. The next one is B2C. Now, that's probably the most common one that we see. That would be business to consumer. That is me running my business and I'm making beautiful bags or I'm making beautiful hair products and I'm running a business and I'm selling it to the likes of Caitlin. Caitlin sees my product, she clicks a couple of buttons on her computer and voila, she is a consumer that has actually purchased my product. Then we move on to the next type of B2G. Now, this is an interesting one that people never talk about, and that is business to government. A lot of businesses do business with government, and we don't quite know how that fits into the ecosystem of e-commerce, but it actually happens. It refers to the use of the internet for public procurement, licensing procedures, and other government-related operations. So I'll give you an example of a business doing e-commerce with government. Have you ever applied for a position, let's even say, where everything is online and you must submit your actual application to work for government there, and perhaps there are even some tests, aptitude tests that you probably have to take, and that is a form thereof of business doing business with government via electronic means. The next one is consumer to business, e-commerce business model in which consumers can offer products and services to companies and the companies pay for the products. I'll give you an example of that. During the COVID environment, government was looking for all sorts of PPE supporting material that one could buy. And I may not particularly be a business per se, but I actually have products that I could sell in my house that are masks. Everyone was trying to sell masks to someone, and therefore I would then be making masks and ultimately then pass them on to a business or a marketplace where they are then selling those particular products to other businesses or to other consumers themselves. It's quite a tricky one, but you see a lot of people in this particular category today, but they don't consider themselves to be in this. You find that with women who are taking up a secondary job online and selling things from home, but selling it to a business that will push that product to consumers. The next one that we have, consumer to consumer, that's also popular. We do this all the time where we sell things on OLX or Gumtree. And when you're looking for something cheap, that's the first place you go. You go to Gumtree or you go to OLX, or if you want to sell something, you go to Gumtree or OLX. It doesn't cost you anything. You just have to know how to maneuver anyone who may be trying to trick you out of your money. But it's probably the easiest entry level to going into e-commerce is through OLX or Gumtree, which is what we then call consumer to consumer. Government to consumer. Government has a lot of services that they offer to us as citizens, and perhaps we should actually call it government to citizens instead of consumers, because we'd like to think that that which government offers us is ultimately free, if you can call it that, and it's their job to offer us those particular services. So that would be you logging in again onto a government site and either, again, applying for employment there, filling out all sorts of forms, again, paying traffic tickets. That's a government function as well. You don't have to go and queue somewhere to go and actually pay for your traffic fines. You can actually do it behind your computer or on your actual cell phone. That is government to consumer. Government to business. Most of us are not in this particular space. It's quite specialized. A business model that refers to government providing services or information to business organization. Government uses B2G model website to approach business organizations. Government, a lot of times, has to communicate with business for a number of reasons. And I'm going to use COVID as a perfect example of that. Before our president would stand before us to make his, periodic speeches to us, to give us updates about whether or not we're moving from level 1 to level 2 or what have you, he had to consult with business organizations to find out exactly what do we do. We talk about tourism. Tourism has taken the biggest hit when it comes to COVID-19, and easing the restrictions amongst them required a conversation with those businesses. Now, this type of conversation can happen physically, but a lot of times it's actually happening through electronic means of communication to understand the business models that these businesses actually have, to basically test where the hotspots may ultimately be in that business should we move from one stage to the other, and the types of products that those particular businesses are offering and what that impact will ultimately be to government services. So it's a very specialized one as well, but one that government has to do on a continual basis. And electronic means of that type of commerce has become far more crucial for government to be in, as opposed to them physically going from place to place, speaking to people in person. Now, I think I've covered all of our different types. Of course, there are opposites of those particular scenarios where it be business to government and so on and so forth. But I think you get the basic understanding of the different types of e-commerce. Then the question is, now you understand what e-commerce is. Well, what are actually the benefits? People keep talking about, yes, there are benefits. We need to start selling. We're restricted in movement at the moment. And it's quite a schlep for me to leave my house because I have to get dressed. I have to look somewhat decent to go shopping. And, it's kind of nice to be in my slippers and look horrible and still be able to shop. So what are the other benefits of being in e-commerce? My favorite one is that you're actually selling 365 days, 24 hours, 7 days a week. Now let that sink in, because we all know about the mall and the hours. You call sometimes and check. It's a public holiday. Are they open? I hope they're open, but what are the actual hours? Are they open only till 12? It's inconvenient, but when you have an e-shop, it's always open. When you're sleeping, your shop is still open for business. It is daylight somewhere else while you're sleeping. So someone is buying your product while you're sleeping. And that's if you've got a strong marketing campaign that makes sure that you're reaching audiences that are also not sleeping. It's faster buying and selling procedure. It really is a quick transaction. You go in at leisure, you're browsing through the shop, you're clicking, you're enlarging the picture to look at it, and you're making a decision. Do I want this particular color? Do I want this texture? Well, let me think about it. You walk away, have a cup of tea. It's the ease of it is there. And it's a greater customer reach. Like I said, while you're sleeping, you're reaching other people elsewhere in the world who are interested in your product or services. So that's better than having a brick and mortar environment where you've got your hours that are set. And of course, you've got landlord who's going to come and lock up the front door and say, see you tomorrow. That doesn't happen with your particular environment. And you don't have a physical setup. Setting up a shop is beautiful. I mean, you can have a beautiful storefront and all of that. It's time consuming to do that. It forever has to be changing, where you have to bring in new material. Your little dolls, if you're selling clothes, have got to put on the latest fashion. It could be fun. It's great. I'm not saying that it doesn't have a space anymore. It's lovely. But how beautiful is it that you can change your storefront window by a few clicks from your bed, from your couch, even from the bathroom? It's completely private how you actually can interact with your different audiences from an e-commerce perspective. And it's a low entry level environment. You don't have to start signing leases first and foremost. You don't have to start thinking about, a percentage of my profit is going towards the rent of this particular fabulous space. I don't have electricity and water bills to pay. I don't have staff that I have to pay to come and nag customers to say, listen, we've got this latest thing here. Please check it out. So from that perspective, there are great benefits to being in e-commerce. But like every good thing, there's always a flip side to it. So let's look at some of the disadvantages of e-commerce. When we buy products, we like to feel, touch, smell them. Those senses are somewhat removed when you enter the e-commerce space. So you can't touch your product, you can't smell it, you can't feel it. So one has to be a bit clever in how you present your products online. So pictures, for example, become very important. How your photography happens. The 3D images are great. Videos, but I'll get into that space a little bit later. So the physical part is removed from the e-commerce space, but there are ways to circumvent that. Limited internet connectivity. We're talking about Africa here. We are still behind when it comes to internet connectivity. Unfortunately, South Africa rates very high in terms of data costs. So that's a battle that we are still fighting today with government to reduce those costs of data, because it all boils down to, do I have the data to actually, one, upload my store, manage my store, and then on the other side, you've got the customer who has to have the data to browse your store in order to buy your products and services. So that's also a limiting factor when it comes to e-commerce. System failure. I think a few years ago, there was some type of a lottery for getting, I'm going to put it bluntly here, a boob job. Someone had done some type of a auction to get a breast reduction or just breast enhancement type of thing, and everyone was logging onto a system, and it crashed. So all the effort of trying to get the foot traffic in, the excitement, and probably data capturing, all of that went bust because something went wrong with that actual technology. So one has to look very closely at what mechanism they're choosing to drive their e-commerce. Is it a stable environment? Are the actual servers, are they sitting in South Africa where they're probably in a position of danger for one reason or another? Or are they sitting in a cloud somewhere where, they're safer, and the chances of them being intercepted is slim? Why? Because when things are in the cloud, they don't actually sit like in a storage room. They are compiled. When you recall them, they kind of come together like as if they're brought together by a magnet. So it's not a mechanism of just pulling something and sitting in a drawer. No, it stops and it says, what was the question? And it pulls all the bits from different spaces and then delivers it to you. So those are questions you have to ask yourself about your shop. Where are my servers? Where's my data sitting so that I can escape the system failure or minimize the compromise of a system failure? Financial fraud. Now, that is probably the biggest fear that an average consumer has, is somebody stealing their credit card details to ultimately steal their money. Now, there are means and ways to check if a website actually is legitimate or not, but I'll cover a little bit of that a little bit later. So that is a fear that, again, we as the e-commerce forum Africa and e-commerce forum South Africa try to educate people to say, when you're on a website, what is it must you be looking for? Is there a logo that tells me this is a safe place to be, or is it not a safe place to be? There are warnings, there are logos that you look for in a shop that will tell you, yes, run away, don't click any further, and that's where danger is. So those are the disadvantages of e-commerce. Now, the evolution of e-commerce is quite interesting. If we can all think back, I don't know how how young the youngest person is who's listening to me right now, but those of us who are older will remember, if we were still adults, were adults in 1995. There was a process of which we bought things. You know, it was before the internet, before the ease of clicks and things like that. So you would buy something based on a TV ad or a radio ad that you heard or something you saw in the newspaper or word of mouth. Somebody said, hey, you know what? My dryer just knocked out after 10 years. I need to go buy another one. The conversation in 1995 in that moment is very different to the conversation you're having about that broken dryer in 2020. So let me just walk you through how the conversation has changed. Okay, so in 1995, you went to a retail store. You said to the salesperson, listen, I heard this on the radio, my dryer broke and I need to buy a new dryer. And what have you got? And the salesperson will say, hey, I've got this brand, I've got that brand. I think this one, how big is your family? It's a family of 4, and we do laundry once a week. And, I need something that's going to accommodate that. And we have a dog, and the rug gets really dirty and goes in the dryer. There's going to be a lot of hair and so on and so forth. So you're having this conversation with this salesperson who ultimately helps you make a decision about the dryer that you're actually going to buy. So they show you around, and then you choose a brand that suits your needs, and off you go. That's 1995. Fast forward to 2020, broken dryer again. What do I do? First thing you do now, you start Googling your problem. I have this dryer and it's like making this funny noise. I think it's broken. It's a Bosch or whatever. What else is out there? I've had this thing for a long time. What else is out there? So you start looking at different brands, AEG, excuse me, Samsung, SMED if you've got the cash, whatever it is. But that's where you start. You don't go to the store first. You start Googling and getting information online. So you start Googling, that's 2020, and you start reading reviews from other people. Other people say, I bought this, it was really terrible. I would never buy it again. Or this was fantastic. I've had it for 2 years. It's never given me a problem. And you're vetting your decision based on some of these reviews that you're reading about this particular product. Then you make up your mind eventually. Aha, I found the exact dryer that I want to buy. And that's the only time you step out of your house to actually go buy it. You're not going to go searching for one or getting opinions about which one to buy from the salesperson. You walk into a store and you say, do you actually have the AEG on stock? It's this particular model. Oh, yes, sir. It's on this side. It's actually on special. Voila. So that's what's actually happened, the evolution of e-commerce. From 1995, our behavior has changed to where we are in 2020, where e-commerce has actually shifted the way that we do things. And that applies to many other things in our lives. So I'm in e-commerce, so I understand what it is. I understand the different types of e-commerce. I understand the evolution of how we arrive at 2020 and how our buying patterns or buying behaviors have actually shifted. So now this is where things get a bit complicated now. I want to have a shop. I want to sell things. What do I do? Where do I start? So there's a thing called e-commerce platforms. I'm going to read this particular one. An e-commerce platform is a software application that allows online businesses to manage their website, marketing, sales, and operations. I like to call this a plug and play. We're not web designers, are we? Most of us, when you say designer, you start cringing. You're thinking, I'm going to be paying a lot of money. I don't know what questions to ask. I don't know if I'm getting ripped off. So all the fear automatically, cripples you. So if you think of a platform as something that you can plug into, makes your life much easier because somebody else has done all the ugly bits at the back on your behalf. So you don't have to do anything but upload pretty pictures and write poetic words to attach to those beautiful pictures. That sounds great, doesn't it? And that's what platforms are in a nutshell. So the word platform sounds very sexy, but just a simple word of plug and play. What examples of platforms. You've got Magento, you've got Shopify, you've got Wix, you've got WooCommerce, and you've also got, you know, your WordPress type environment. But these are pretty much the most popular that we're looking at in South Africa. The one that dominates, though, which is funny, is WooCommerce. What they all offer pretty much is the same. I know they will all want to shoot me for saying that. People have their preferences. There's, you know, if you go to the Magento website, on the first page, on the home page, you will see Magento versus Shopify. If you go to Shopify, it'll say, you know, Shopify versus WooCommerce. You'll see that debate amongst themselves. You just have to decide on what type of platform you require. Nothing is for free, though. You know, you may see setup costs are free, monthly fees are free, transactional fees are free. There are hidden costs that are not outlined in this particular slide. I did this on purpose because even though I talk about plug and play, if you're a business person, you still have to do your research. You still have to go out there and ask the questions. You still have to go out there and compare what works for you. Gone are the days of being spoon-fed as business people. You have to be hungry enough to do the work, hungry enough to put in the work. That is the most important thing. No one's going to hold your hand through this. It is not difficult. Just set time aside. And I say, if you set aside 30 minutes a day for 7 days, you will learn exactly what needs to be done from beginning to end on your e-commerce journey. Just 30 minutes a day for 7 days. You start with, what is my product? Who is my audience? Who do I want to sell to? Where can I sell it? What platforms are available? What marketing tools do I need to attach myself to? Ask yourself those questions. So it's a who, what, when, why, and how. If you can answer those in 7 days, 30 minutes a day, you are well on your way. So here is where you have to do your homework to find out what the differences are between these particular platforms and which one, suits my particular needs at this particular moment. And that would be your short-term, medium-term, and long-term. Because you may shift. You may find you start with Shopify. And as your shop gets bigger, as your business grows, you may find Magento to be far more appropriate because of the bulk aspect of what you are churning out. So do your homework in that regard. But in a nutshell, now we know what platforms are. Marketplaces. Now, again, it sounds complicated. Yes, e-commerce marketplaces. Bottom line, simplifying it. You know the flea market? Pretty much that's what it is. You know, we all take our goods and we transport them to the flea market. We put them on a table. People walk up. Oh, this is pretty. I want to buy it. Ching, ching. Credit card or debit card. Done. Now, marketplaces are exactly that. It's places where you can sell your goods in somebody else's store. So a marketplace is exactly that. It may sound fancy when you read the words, how it's written, but in a nutshell, that's what it is. It's you selling your goods and services in somebody else's store. Now, it's an online store, obviously. Now, there are numerous marketplaces out there. I talked a little bit about Gumtree and OLX, easy entry, you know, consumer to consumer. It works there. But also it's a great place to advertise your business, to bring people to your store as well. So it's not just a consumer to consumer platform. It could also be a business to consumer platform for marketing purposes. So you get a nice banner there, you see in the back section or whatever, and you put your banner there and people click there and they go straight to your particular store, e-store to buy. Now, there are quite a number of these that are available. I'm sure most of you have heard of your Take-A-Lot. It's probably the most exciting thing everybody talks about ever since lockdown. It was Take-A-Lot this, Take-A-Lot that. Yes, they are the largest we have in South Africa, Take-A-Lot. So selling your products on Take-A-Lot makes a difference. Again, you have to look at your budget. They don't offer you this platform for free. They're also running a business. So you need to, again, look at the cost, the monthly costs of actually selling on Take-A-Lot. The money that they take from your particular sale. There are things called warehousing, you know, where you have them warehousing your products for you, as opposed to you selling it directly from your home or your little shop, wherever you're storing your goods. So there are a number of opportunities there. Then you have your neighborhood ones, like your Hello Pretty. Those are more, community-based type of platforms, where it is, community size, where people in the particular neighborhood selling to each other type of environment. Then you have your cross-border type of environments that are popular, like Jumia. And they happen to sit on our eCommerce Forum Africa board. And they are selling throughout Africa, and that is continental particular sales. And then there's the Mall for Africa, bringing in products and services, particularly products from America that, are kind of difficult for us to buy. If I want to buy an expensive item that is made in the US, by the time it reaches customs, I've paid more than the actual item is actually worth. They saw a gap in the market, they warehouse all that stuff under one roof, and then they send it to you, bypassing all of the, sort of the hurdles you would go through if you were to buy directly from the USA. There's macro there, as you can see. There's eBay. We all know eBay is probably one of the oldest, along with Amazon, which has grown over the years from selling books to what it is today as a store that you can sell with. Brown Sense is got nearly 200,000 members in South Africa. People don't even know much about it. It's specialized in that it's trying to give a leg up to brown people in Africa now. So they're moving from South African to a Pan-African environment. They've recently launched their own platform to where you can actually sell your goods and services in South Africa and across borders. So those are some of the marketplaces we're looking at. Payment gateways. Okay, I'm going to go back again. You know what e-commerce is. You know the different types of e-commerce. You know the pros and cons of e-commerce. We know our markets, what a marketplace is. We know what a platform is. Now, how do people actually pay for this stuff? Often with Gumtree and your OLX, you find people saying EFT, and once the money shows, then I'll wrap it up and send it to you. There's an element of trust that has to go with that, because it's like a chicken and egg story. You're only going to release my goods after I pay you. But what if I pay you and then you don't release my goods? So it's a different type of relationship you're having there. But then when you talk about payment gateways, you're talking about organizations that specialize in making it easier for people to pay with a MasterCard, a Visa, a check card, a debit card, EFT itself, PayPal, Yoko, and all those type of payment opportunities that you can offer your clients. Remember, in South Africa, there are only about, stand corrected, last time I checked, there were less than 20,000 credit card holders in the country at some point. I'm not sure if those figures are correct. I'm sure Daniel will probably correct me when he speaks a bit later. But it's not a very big figure. But we have check cards and debit cards that people can actually use to actually pay for their goods and services on your online store. So if you look at this particular slide here, you can see your choices in what you choose for people to be able to pay for their goods and services on your site. Again, if you go with a platform, a plug and play, all of this is already incorporated. So you don't have to call these guys and say, listen, can I use your services? It's part and parcel of the plug and play. But if you go with a developer, you're going to have those conversations about how do you get these guys locked into your particular website. Logistics are everything. It's lovely that people can navigate your store and see your beautiful products and all of that. Now, remember, it's got to leave your store and get to an actual customer. And when a customer orders something and they are sure that it's gone through, they've paid, the last thing they want to hear is that you're out of stock and they've already paid you. So logistics start with that click, that final sale, that product has to be available. You can't be calling customers with stories about, well, I didn't count, I only had 2 cones, and now I can't send you a cone. That's the end of your customer. And your reputation, they're going to tell the next customer, and so on and so forth. So it starts with your warehousing, keeping a list of what you do have in stock before you start saying it's available. So it starts with that. And then ultimately, it's a conversation with your courier companies about how does that product get from me and get to my customer. That could be an expensive exercise if you don't know what you're doing. Courier companies can range in price, from 45 Rand or 49, I think was the cheapest, to send something that's under, it's 1 kilogram or less, to all the way to 200 Rand to just send the very same thing. So shopping around is very, very important. Getting a relationship going with your courier companies is very important. And the reliability to deliver on that promise that you made to the customer. So when you say to a customer, and you'll find this will take a lot, they'll say it'll be delivered between 7 and 14 days. In most cases, they under-promise and over-deliver on purpose. So you'll always say, oh my God, it came sooner than I thought. They already put that in as a marketing ploy to make sure that you are going to be a satisfied customer. You will sing the praises that my product even got here earlier. Isn't that great? They've calculated that. You need to be in that position where you also do that calculation so you can market it to your potential customers to say, even though I'll be there in 3 days, 5 to 7 days is probably what you want to say, so that you give time for anything that could go wrong in between. Perhaps the driver gets into an accident on his way to picking up your parcel, and your parcel gets destroyed in there in a fire, whatever it is. You've got to build in that contingency so that you come out the winner at the end. And managing your stock. E-commerce logistics, again, I think I'm almost out of my time here. I'm going to take 30 seconds. I'm so sorry. Logistics are everything. So if you look at the value chain, it all starts with the manufacturing of the actual product itself. Whether you're importing it from China, you're making it yourself, you've got people in the village who are making your beads, whatever that is, it starts there and it ends with the customer actually holding the actual product. So everything in between has to be accounted for and part of you reconciling exactly how your business is going to be run. So I think if you take time to study this, you need to see yourself in every stage of this, even the payment process, guarantees, and the reverse of that, the returning of a product. So, I thought I was thinner than I am. The dress is too tight. Oh my God, I need to take it back. You need to have the reverse aspect of it to where, how does a customer return that item to me without upsetting them? It's easy for me to get in my car, to go to the mall and return it. Now it's duplicating courier costs if the person is returning it. And you have to be very careful in your small writing about your return policy. It must be visible on your site. So people understand that if something doesn't fit, they don't want it anymore, it's not what they thought it was, how do they return it back to you? Digital marketing. I think Daniel will probably cover a little bit about this. So we move from basic to advanced. Basics of the digital marketing is really interfacing, taking e-commerce and plugging it into your digital marketing strategy. What is digital marketing? It's a sexy word. Really, it's about marketing in a digital environment on the internet. So we all know what marketing is. It's electronic aspect of that. So social media, that is part and parcel of that. So your Instagram plays a role, your Facebook plays a role. Believe it or not, even Twitter, when you tweet things, something is up and so on and so forth, and people retweet and so on and so forth. Excuse me. And there's email marketing as well. That's a bit more sophisticated. It's more for B2B environment as opposed to B2C environment. So if you look at the basic list, every e-commerce shop, e-shop, must have every one of those ticked. When you want to grow, you need to the advanced side of things, and those need to be ticked, with the last thing being cross-border. You want to be in that space if you're growing. You don't want to just sell to South Africa. That you need to jump that hurdle and start selling overseas, and that's when you're advancing and you're ultimately growing. All right, I think that's it for me. So thank you guys. I hope I was helpful there.
Thank you, Loretta. I think that was fascinating. I think really, really interesting to just hear about the history of e-commerce and And I always find the history so important to frame how we think about things now. So definitely for everybody who's currently trying to get into marketplaces and payment gateways, there's now an understanding of how to enter that space. Just before we move on to Daniel, a couple of interesting things. I was intrigued that you spoke about the African Free Trade Agreement, and we won't unpack this here, but obviously that's a phenomenal opportunity for entrepreneurs to sell their goods and services across Africa. I mean, that is certainly set to become the world's biggest market. So I think that's exciting for us here to understand that if we set the foundations now, there will be a whole continent to trade freely across. So really, really inspirational for us to keep that in mind for bigger things. I've quickly had a look at who's here today. And Daniel, before you start chatting, just to know, we've got legal tech here, we've got talent management software solutions, we've got some guys from the automotive industry, hospitality, some eco startups, quite a few consultancies, and quite a few technology companies. So that's exciting. Also interesting, like maybe physical product versus services. Interesting discussion for us. Right, so before I hand over to Daniel, I'm going to read about who Daniel is, as we skipped over his slide. Daniel, it's fantastic to have him here. He is the founder and director of an early investment fund and a company builder, Team Africa Ventures, meaning that Daniel's done this before. He's an entrepreneur by experience. And currently, Daniel's also the CEO of Click2Sure, a leading insurtech company. So Daniel, I'm going to hand over to you, and you can tell us about where you've come from, your digital journey, and perhaps guide some of the entrepreneurs in this call through where to start, what to do, what to focus on.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Caitlin. Yeah, I appreciate being part of this initiative. And really, what I'm going to cover today is more of a personal journey, I think, more than any specifics around go and use the site or do this or do that or actionable sort of items. I think it's going to be more about sort of the journey I've taken to date, and which really, to a larger degree, started off with Groupon, which was now just going on 10 years ago, which feels like quite a while back. I just want to check here in terms of my slides. So I can now, okay, so I can click along. So yeah, a little bit of background. I mean, I've been an entrepreneur most of my life. I don't really know much else. I wasn't very good in corporates. I was involved in a number of different initiatives prior to Groupon and more recently Team Africa Ventures and Click2Sure. So I guess from the age of whatever it was, I think 8 years old, I was trying to sell things or do things or build businesses, some more successful than others. I lost everything I had when I think I was around about 20 years old. And unfortunately, so I sort of built up stuff and ended up losing all that through a process and a bad decision, which is not a bad lesson to learn early in life, because cash flow and understanding expenses and just doing business in a certain way is, I guess, the foundations of which I learned how to become a more successful entrepreneur, maybe. So yeah, but that's the life. I know, obviously, as Caitlin mentioned, Groupon was a local sort of success story. Just as a matter of interest, that business still operates today here locally under another guise called Hyperly. So it's still a marketplace, still operational today, and still part of our Team Africa Ventures initiative. Although not in any way associated with Groupon, but essentially the same model. And I'll give you the history of that. And then, yeah, as correctly pointed out, I currently run a business called Click2Sure, which I founded actually off the back of my journey with Groupon. The problem that we solve is we enable the insuring of items digitally. So I'm buying something online. I want to attach a policy of insurance to that item. I can now, I can use Click2Sure's platform to enable that. So I buy a TV, I want to insure it, I want to extend a warranty through Takealot or whoever it might be, Macro, whatever. We provide the technology layer that enables the e-commerce site's customer to buy that policy of insurance, administrate it, report on it, and so on. So we're now a platform enabler. And then Team Africa Ventures, yeah, it's just an investment holding company which has a portfolio of about across a lot of them here in South Africa and across Africa and other parts of the world. Yeah, so that's a little bit of background. So firstly, the Twangu, which became Groupon Story, yeah, so started back around about 2010. I'd been living overseas. I'd been involved in the prior sort of telecoms company, which ended up being part of a reverse listing, which sounded more glamorous than what it actually was. But I then took a couple of years off and did a bit of studying, which is the first time I studied in my life. And then, and off the back of that journey, then decided to look at the coming back to South Africa and look at more technology type businesses. I attended an initiative called Silicon Cape, which I ultimately actually became the chairman of down the road. But I saw a lot of guys in technology. I can't write a line of code, but I saw a lot of guys in the technology space that seemed to be doing interesting things and making money. And it just so happened at a similar time that there was this company that was in the US called Groupon, which was an interesting model. And the reason why it was interesting was that initially, at least looking into it, was that it seemed like it was in the services space, so they weren't selling physical products. It was an interesting cash flow business in the sense that, what as a website we sold to our customers, we as the operator gained those revenues from, but we only paid our supplier, which is a restaurant or a spa, when you as our customer went to go and redeem. So it was a very cash flow positive business, which can often be a constraint within, when you're trying to build a business, you need funding, you need revenues. And of course, then if you look at sort of digital penetration, if you're looking at sort of 2010, we knew that this curve was going to be a radical increase. It seemed like an interesting space. And still at that stage, probably Takealot was in existence, but it was still, very, very small physical goods. There was Kalahari, which was owned by Naspers, which actually Takealot ended up buying, was, doing physical products, but there wasn't anything really in the services space, number one. And number two, relative to where we are today, internet penetration usage was minuscule. I remember somebody once saying that the entire e-commerce industry, in terms of revenue, was probably equivalent to roughly about one macro store. And so, less than 1% of retail, very, very small. But, if you look overseas in terms of high e-commerce growth, and even at that stage, I'm talking about 2010, 2011, we knew it had to increase. So we started looking around at different opportunities. When I say we, myself and my business partner, co-founder Wayne Gosling, and we, we're looking at different opportunities, tried a whole bunch of different stuff, and then struck upon this Groupon model, which just seemed really interesting, as I mentioned. And so we launched a business locally called Twangu. I doubt anybody would ever will remember that. We got into this group buying, as it was known, space. Really, it was a marketplace play, which Loretta covered earlier, and I'll explain that in more detail as we go through. But the opportunity was saying, we'll go to services type businesses. So these are restaurants, spas, beauty salons, hairdressers, whatever the case might be. We'll negotiate a good deal with them. So as you can see here, just an example of a deal, which is for a restaurant. And then we'll give you, the customer, that discount while bringing to the establishment new customers. And so, we took our, so basically how it would work, you pay, $250 as a customer to us. We'd negotiate a buy price of like $200 or whatever it was, actually sometimes even more than that. And you would obviously, as a customer of Twangu, get a massive discount. We would take a percentage of whatever is sold that we sell to our customers, and you would get a new customer that would now come to your restaurant. You'd get a meal of some sorts, and obviously then you can upsell them into other items, and there are all kinds of, you can retain them as a customer. And that's really what the business was all about. That's where it started. We really battled to get that business going. We literally started on our dining room table, literally. I see somebody's commenting that the slides haven't changed, but I think they should be. I think everybody else can see the slides changing. If not, then maybe just put a comment. So anyway, but literally started myself and Wayne. I was the sales guy, as was Wayne. We used to go knock on restaurants and beauty salons' doors. We would go to try and convince them to put deals onto our page. We had no real following. and it was pretty tough. And it was also very competitive. We also realized we're not technology experts. We don't write code or anything like that. We're just entrepreneurs looking for opportunities. And so we made one critical choice up front, which is to find a partner for the technology. One didn't have the luxury of Shopify, Magento, and all these platforms that are available now, no-code platforms, all kinds of interesting techs, where essentially those partners to a larger degree solve that technology problem. That wasn't really even a thing back then, or certainly not to what it is today, and certainly not to the degree that we needed the capability of being able to issue vouchers, sell vouchers, so on and so forth. And so we decided to partner. We partnered with a company that their purpose was to build a group buying platform or marketplace platform. They got equity in the business for doing that, and they then built out the Twangu platform. And I'll never forget, we launched on the day the World Cup first soccer match in South Africa happened. You can imagine on everybody's mind was far greater things than buying deals online, if they were even online. And that was really the start of the journey. And we realized quite quickly that this was quite an interesting model. It generated cash quite quickly because, as I mentioned, what I sold to you as a customer today as Twangu, I only paid the supplier Salt Restaurant when you as a customer went to go and redeem your voucher. And so, obviously, while those monies had to be kept in reserve, it was a very cash flow positive business, which allowed, I didn't have to buy lots of inventory or stock or, find suppliers online or overseas or anything like that. It was cash generative from day one, which allowed us then to invest very heavily into marketing and online marketing to get traction. Of course, the tools, the platforms, the solutions that one has today relative to what one had back then. It was very rudimentary. It was, online digital marketing was a new thing. Facebook had barely become a thing. There were all these sort of interesting trends. Instagram, I don't even think existed back then. So the world that we live in today, relative to what we lived in back then, is radically different, and it was a lot more difficult to actually get traction online. But somehow, the beauty of the Groupon model allowed us to get decent traction. But we also realized up front that actually, trying to become, it became very competitive in the space. In fact, at the point when we sold and partnered the exit of that business, it ended up, there were over 40 competitors in the market. We were still, give or take, certainly within the top 5, I'd say, based on traction and revenues and so on. But we knew it was kind of a race to the bottom. A lot of big media companies were getting into the space, and so we knew that we had to get we either had to sell or we had to get proper funding from somewhere to radically grow the business to if we wanted to win the race. And so we decided from the start that sort of being who was the lead in the space. Groupon became the leader pretty soon in the game. And so I used to every week at the end of the week send a guy by the name of Andrew Mason, who was the founder of the business, an email saying, by the way, this is Twangu, we're here in South Africa, and this week we sold 100 vouchers and we've generated 10,000 rands worth of revenue. And of course, relative to his business, which was the real Groupon business, which obviously had become the fastest growing company to reach $1 billion worth of revenue ever. I don't know if that still stands, but certainly at that point, faster than Google, faster than Amazon. It was like, who's this irritation Daniel guy? Yeah, I don't even know if you even opened my email, but my email. But every week I'd continue doing this, and was one of the tactics that we deployed. I guess I share that story only because it's it's not less about maybe being the biggest or having all the money in the world. It's about being clever about how one sort of approaches things, and maybe even stupid. I didn't know what Andrew's email address was. It turned out it was andrew@groupon.com. But about 6 months into our journey, we got an email from, not an email, it was a call. It was a Friday afternoon. So I was getting some water. Friday afternoon, and we got this call from on my cell phone, because we didn't have phones. I mean, it wasn't like that's how we operated, literally off a cell phone. That was our customer service number from a guy in the US, and he said, tell me a little bit more about this business, like how things going, what are your numbers? And it was the head of merger and acquisitions for Groupon. Anyway, long story short, we ended up selling up or partnering to sell the business quite early on. We negotiated a pretty amazing deal with Groupon, where, you know, as the business grew, as we grew the business for them, you know, we earned out of the process, and you know, so within about 150 odd days, we managed to you know, partner and sell the business, and obviously get a far bigger partner into the business that had expertise, knowledge, know-how, and funding to allow us to capture the local market. And certainly not, you know, these things don't happen always, and I always I don't want to give people the, you know, it's not just as easy as that, and it's seldom about the luck. It was a lot of luck that we managed to get that right, but it was also a lot of you know, hard work that had gone into other ventures to get to that point. So I don't want to give people the illusion that it's just easy and quick and easy like that, but it can be if you you can be lucky. So that's that was the Groupon story. What was about it? You know, so if you look at the traditional media or marketing funnel, you know, spend a lot of money to get awareness, and this still remains today, unless you're clever about that. To then, you know, to get consideration of whatever your offering is, that equates to conversion, loyalty, if you can get to that point, and advocacy, where word of mouth, right? So I love your product, I use it, I think it's the best thing in the world, I tell all my friends, and that's obviously ultimately, as a marketeer, what you want to do. With Groupon, it was different, right? You got an amazing deal, you saved a lot of money, you hopefully had a good experience, and obviously you know, there were stories in the media, and I'm sure you might, some of you might recall those, some of you might not, around, you know, the experience that you actually got using this Groupon deal, but it provided the partner fulfilled that. You got massive awareness for zero cost. So I, as a salt restaurant, just going back to that example, I paid nothing to work with Groupon. I put my deal up, it went live, you know, at whatever, 6 o'clock in the morning, it went out to whatever our database was. As telling you, in the email, you received an email with this offer. That cost me absolutely nothing as Salt Restaurant. But I got massive awareness, right? Anything that we, or as Groupon, were spending on creating awareness for Groupon, this is a marketplace kind of offering, you benefited off, provided you had the right deal and you were speaking to the right consumer base that was suitable for the product you're offering. And so relative, you know, in comparison, if I had to go and run a Google Ads campaign, or, you know, Facebook social media campaign, whatever, it actually cost me nothing to run that deal. Obviously, then, you know, as the deal sold, I would then get a new customer as a restaurateur, and I would essentially cover the costs of whatever that meal was that I was giving you, at very least, if not make a small margin, hopefully. And obviously, the bigger discount I gave, the more attractive the offer was, the more customers I gained. So that was sort of the magic, to some degree, of the Groupon model. You know, I can tell you crazy stories about, you know, the volumes of stuff that we were selling through deals. I mean, you know, 10,000 spa treatments, you know, massages for an individual spa establishment, which is maybe on the one side an amazing result, on the other side, you know, if you're a small operator with a couple of beds and a couple of masseurs, that becomes quite a challenge. And obviously that's where, you know, that was the other side of the Groupon challenge, was actually managing supply, managing volumes, managing price points, that you didn't have like millions of customers that you actually couldn't service. So, you know, the model had its ups and downs, but ultimately, you know, as a customer getting an amazing deal, you're able to then, you know, it was very viral. It created massive awareness, massive advocacy, which is really what ultimately was the success of the Groupon business. You know, so massive exposure for your brand. Obviously, it you know, drives trial. You know exactly how many customers you sold to, because at the end of the deal, you've got, you know, 100 new customers, or 200 or 1,000 new customers. Sorry, a little bit of feedback there. I don't know. Somebody just unmuted themselves. It's very measurable. It's obviously facilitates upsell and cross-sell, customer retention. You know, it's obviously no upfront costs. So anyway, it was a marketplace kind of model, and I guess you know, it worked really well. And it's not just in the group buying space or services space; it's more generally the you know, the any sort of marketplace kind of offering. So like Take A Lot is today, you know, it gives you a great opportunity if you have a product that you want to sell, for you to leverage their exposure, their reach, their massive market customer base to hopefully attract customers that can then buy that product. The comparative is that if you set up a store of your own, you know, to get that kind of reach and that kind of exposure, it will cost you millions, hundreds of millions to try and replicate what a Takealot kind of marketplace has today in terms of reach and so on. And so that's why potentially as an entrepreneur, whether you have a service to offer, or whether you have a product to offer, you want to leverage those marketplace kind of environments to potentially go to market. The alternative is that you go and build your own site and you then have to solve that problem for yourself. And if you have a base of customers to whom you already have email addresses, if you think of different examples, if you have an offline offering where you maybe have customers, you have their contact details, being able to then gradually build your online presence. Of course, that's a different type of approach, and maybe you can get that right. But if you are a manufacturer or service provider and you're looking to gain online exposure, online traction for that product or service, it's far easier to leverage a marketplace than to try and build that yourselves. And so that's why marketplace kind of offerings have become very popular. You don't have the overhead, you don't have the you don't have to solve the customer issues per se, payments, fraudulent payments being processed, whatever. All that headache is logistics, whatever the case might be. All that headache is shifted onto that marketplace provider, which is why marketplaces more generally have become so attractive. And I guess in the services space, why Groupon was so explosive, and still to this day, the likes of Hyperly, Daddy's Deals, all these different partners out there are still quite an attractive proposition, certainly in the services space. So yeah, obviously the business grew. I think at one point we counted a total of close to 300 employees, literally from a handful. Well, it started from myself and Wayne to literally a handful of people. We didn't have offices at the point that we sold the business or partnered to sell the business at that stage. So it became a massive success story locally. I mean, those were some of the kind of numbers that we saw in this peak. So massive traffic, massive revenue numbers, and really quite a substantial success story in the local sort of e-commerce environment. Of course, back then, we 3 times won the award for top e-commerce site. I'm talking about really early days. This was before Takealot. Takealot, I think, then from 2014 onwards has won thereafter. But obviously done an amazing job in the physical product space, and really become the Amazon of Africa, if not certainly not South Africa, if not Africa. But it was an amazing journey, lots of learnings. And it was an amazing time. We used to sell everything from physical products, Skip. I forget the volumes of what we sold in this deal, but it was literally hundreds of thousands of bottles of Skip. Kindle Fires, newspaper, magazines, Stir Kinnickor tickets, you name it. I can tell you that one of the biggest headaches of this business was the logistics side of it. Logistics is just complicated. It's very complicated in this country more generally. I would, however, say that relative to to where things are today, it has moved on radically further. The kinds of e-commerce 3PL kind of solutions that you have today are radically different to what they were 10 years ago, but it's still nonetheless a challenge. And so again, that's why Takealot type marketplaces make a lot of sense for physical products. But you also have issues around fraud, returns. There are all kinds of challenges with physical products. These are just other examples of different deals that we ran at different points in time. So it was very physical product orientated. Travel was a big category, and there's some crazy examples of the kind of volumes of things that we sold. Starlight Cruises. I'll never forget that. On the 19th of January was a year. It was sort of early 2011, I think, or 2012. We launched MSC Starlight Cruises. Now you'd think most people get paid sort of early on in December. Then normally most people are gone on their holidays, their end of year holidays, or whatever the case is. They're now desperately waiting for their paycheck at end of January. And yet we sold I think it was a couple of thousand Starlight Cruises on the 19th of January, and I think it was about 2012. So there are always all these weird learnings and things that when you look back at it, or you think at the time, well, how would that ever work, or why would it work? We kind of constantly broke these records and proved ourselves wrong in so many different regards as we went down this road. Even to what degree, how big this business could grow. We at the time of actually negotiating the deal, and obviously I can't give the detail of that, but we set certain targets in revenue numbers of what we had to get to build the business to in order to, see some sort of return and payout or whatever. And I think within the first 8 months of operating under those terms and conditions, we'd already reached, year 3 or whatever it was, target. So, nobody would ever have thought, we didn't think it was ever possible. So it's kind of just was it's a fascinating journey, and also obviously doing good. So we had an element of giving back, and we used to run sort of campaigns, selected campaigns for different initiatives that we used to run. So that was just an example of it. Obviously, along that side, that marketplace is typically, and you look at Takealot, they solve logistics, they solve different other problems. But in the services space, there are all kinds of different tools that we offered: payment solutions, loyalty solutions, till points, all kinds of different point of sale solutions, whatever, which was complemented that services offering. So this is typically how marketplaces work, and obviously adding more value to that to our partners. So that was a Groupon journey. I think coming out of it, I think there were sort of 3 key learnings that I took away, and I guess I think that's still very relevant even still today. The first question you have is, how do you build? So assuming you've got an offering, right? You've got some sort of service offering, you've got some sort of product offering. I think there's as Loretta very effectively covered, there's so many different ways you can go to market, different platform solutions, ways to take that product and to go online, to build that e-commerce presence. But you still have this challenge of trust. And so this is where the marketplace model makes potentially a lot of sense. If you put up establish a brand, if you haven't already got a following, if you to try and create a brand or following is very difficult, right? It's a little bit like, I always use the analogy of putting up a billboard in the middle of a desert, because how do you start getting a following for that website that or e-commerce offering, whatever it might be? It's not just that simple. It costs money and it's costly. So the question you've got to have is, how do you build trust? How do you build brand awareness for whatever you're going to market with? And so, I'm a big advocate for rather using marketplace and somebody else's presence, of which there are plenty of solutions too, to build that trust and to build that awareness. So that's number 1. Number 2, logistics, right? So if you've got physical items, the question is, and so even more so, I'm going back 10 years now, and really how we capitalize on a lot of the opportunity, because the incumbent partners were maybe not using logistics solutions as much as we were, or they're using different types of logistics solutions. And of course, as we know today, Takealot has its own delivery, it has its own solution. That's how far it's had to go to actually solve that problem. Logistics is complicated, it's difficult. Ultimately you're relying on a third party to deliver that product to the end customer. There's theft, there's risk, there's just there's so much complexity, putting aside the cost of that, to solving that problem. And so again, that's why I lean towards more sort of either service, digital type offerings, or marketplace type solutions to solve that problem for you. And the third one's of course payment, right? So again, if you're an unknown brand, or if you haven't got a following, that payments a challenge. And in fact, I just read an article last week about a local website where someone set up a website and they're scamming customers for payments. And of course, that doesn't help the industry, because e-commerce gets a bad name. Can I trust this website that I'm actually putting my credit card details into, and am I going to get the product at the end of the day? And so making that as easy, as simple, as being as payment agnostic, but incorporating as many different options as you can, is another way to overcome that objective. So I guess what I'm saying is that I'm not saying it's impossible to go and build your own e-commerce website. It's a lot easier than what it was 10 years ago, and there's so many different platform solutions out there. But I would just say that if I was in the entrepreneur looking at the space, if I didn't have a product or a service, I'd do the following. I'd look at a service over a product, and I'd look at a marketplace or an angle to get that service to market before I'd look at trying to build my own website from the bottom up, my own brand. It's just going to be, you're going to need that much more money and that much more know-how to get it right. So some interesting data or research that was done more recently around delivery, obviously been a big issue. And, this was done by Magento more recently here in South Africa. Reasons shoppers will become repeat customers, free delivery. And it really is a big one, right? Price, free returns, delivery, and then retail has a good reputation. I think that's still, obviously if you can't get away with being if you have a bad reputation, you're out of the game. So that's, you can have no reputation, but if you have a bad reputation, you're not going to be able to operate. But that free delivery price, free returns, and within 5 days these are the kind of criteria. Another interesting thing, and Loretta actually mentioned it earlier around payments. Just to clarify this, there are over 20 million card holders they estimate in South Africa. These are about 2016, 2017 numbers, of which about 4 to 5 million are credit cards, and the rest are either sort of partner store cards or debit cards. And the preferred payment methods kind of adds up here, 46%, 40%, 38%. Bank transfers, cash on delivery, and then obviously e-wallets such as PayPal, Apple Pay, whatever. It's obviously Magento specific again, but just some interesting sort of insights over there. What I will say around payments is that credit cards having as many payment options as possible is the preference, but I'd say cards are absolutely key, and EFT is second to that more generally. If you haven't got one or both of those, you're kind of not going to really get started. And cards traditionally, just because they're simpler and easier to transact with, are inherently where you kind of got to have cards, otherwise you're not going to be able to kind of get started. So that's a little bit about payments, and obviously you have all these other innovative solutions like SnapScan and Zapper and all these other different channels. But generally we have a premise in e-commerce, which is that one-click checkout. It's making that buying process as simple as you can. So the less questions or the less information you've got to fill out, every obstacle to get into that pay and transaction completed is another challenge to getting the transaction done, and potential risk the customer is going to go away. So you want to make that checkout process as simple as you can. If I was an entrepreneur right now looking at the e-commerce space, I honestly couldn't think of a better time to do that. I think we all know COVID-19 has been a massive enabler to moving the economy into more of a digital space. This is a more recent report, and there've been plenty of them around just the growth of e-commerce in this country, and social distancing, not wanting to go into stores, not being able to go into stores, just being able to make that choice online has seen a huge growth in e-commerce numbers. And it's a rising tide, and you want to be on that rising tide, and I think it's opened up the pathway to individuals, guys, entrepreneurs being able to really fish off into a far bigger pool of people that are online, digital, and looking to buy stuff online. So it's a really exciting time. I think also just beyond South Africa as well, just some interesting numbers around mobile phone penetration, which I think is quite nicely summed up over here. I think we underestimate actually the degree to which smartphone penetration exists, and how that compares more globally, and how we really have quite a lead position in that regard. So you want to be smartphone ready, you want to be sort of mobile intuitive, you don't want to forget that. You don't just want to be web enabled. Back in 2000s, 2010, 2011, smartphones and online, nobody really bought through the cell phone. To think about how that shifted on to today, I think it was only in the last 5 years we've seen that radical shift in people using smartphones, apps, that kind of stuff to actually make purchase more generally. And then if we look at Africa, so a couple of leaders more generally in Africa. But really, the way that I like to look at Africa is down to cities and what addressable market you have within cities, because ultimately the challenge is less so about the country per se. I mean, obviously it comes with challenges too, to go into different markets. But what is the addressable market in a city, and how do you really get your offering right and sold for, specifically where they're physical products, city by city versus trying to sell nationally, potentially. So it's just an interesting way to look at things. You know, you can obviously, you know, you can obviously look at things in different ways, but certainly it's, you can take a city by city approach, and you know, I think it's an interesting way to look at potentially as an entrepreneur launching a product, going to market, trialing something versus trying to solve a whole country problem. So yeah, that's me. That's my story. I see there's some questions in the chat. I don't know how we want to deal with those, but more than happy to filter ones that are appropriate to myself. But thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. That was really interesting. I love hearing entrepreneur stories straight from the entrepreneurs themselves, as I'm sure that's why everyone's here on the call today. There were a couple of things you said that I thought were worth noting. One, that you started from scratch, because sometimes I think we all get so intimidated and we don't think, hey, we're just normal people. You just need to put a little plan together and go for it, and phone the right people and connect with the right people. And you don't have to be an expert in this space in order to grow something to the extent and the scale that you did. So I think that's always very interesting, and thank you for sharing that. Two other things that I took from that was definitely rather leverage marketplaces than build it yourself, just in terms of the expense and the hassle. But interestingly enough, I love that part where some of your anecdotes, when you said there were kind of uncanny, weird things that happened, you know, unpredictable sales that occurred when you didn't think they would happen, whether it was the Starlight Cruises, the MSC Cruises. And that's interesting to note, because I suspect for all of us, as you go down an e-commerce digital route, it's not always going to be predictable, and it's going to be a journey, and you have to go into this mentality that it's going to be this learning journey that's going to evolve and ebb and flow and change. So we've had a couple of questions. Let's just perhaps start with, we've timed this very well, so we've got about 5 or 10 minutes for questions. The first one being, as a consulting company, our services are best delivered through a combination of face-to-face as well as virtual interaction. Is it possible to give some advice on how services such as legal advice, accounting, etc. are moving to e-commerce? It's a challenge to list a menu of options for services. Any ideas on how other people have done this? So Loretta or Daniel, who feels best? Loretta, let's start with you. I think you're on mute, Loretta.
There we go. Sorry about that. The most challenging thing is selling products that are actually services. You have to be a bit more innovative. If you're talking about face-to-face contact with clients, well, you know, virtual space allows for that to actually happen. What then needs to happen is the actual back end has to be built in order to create those appointments, if I can call it that, for you to actually zip your services over to someone as you would a package, if that makes any sense. So physical interaction today has changed, like Daniel was saying, is that we're actually, you know, having to shift from having physical meetings, which is not a bad thing. It's actually not a bad thing. We need to cope and move forward with these things. But just the fact that we're sitting here and talking, that is a consultation that one can actually have. You know, Microsoft Teams, for example, allows for various ways of having meetings and virtual interactions with people. So it's really about the clever way of circumventing this mental block that I physically have to be in a space. You actually do not physically have to be anywhere today, and your services can actually be delivered in exactly the same manner that which you're actually conversing with people online. Daniel, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, so I mean, I think it's a really interesting question, and it's probably it's one of the areas that I'm probably the most excited about. The evolution of sort of, you know, podcasts and e-learning and virtual everything is something that's been explosive over the last, certainly over the last 6 months, but even, you know, it's sort of a trend that's been emerging over the last sort of probably about 4 or 5 years. And so I guess, you know, my guidance in terms of that question is that, you know, there's so many free e-learning development platforms out there where you can literally create a bunch of content and package it, you know, package into modules, e-learning modules, sell it online. And really the opportunity here is to think about your business differently. So as a consulting company, I'm guessing you probably look at selling hours, selling people, selling hours, basically. Think about it from the perspective of selling content and selling that content potentially both locally, but also potentially even more internationally, which is where the opportunity sits. But being using that as a segue into selling consulting hours. So you provide an element of knowledge that people pay for in modules, or pay for in a podcast or something like that, and they get elements of know-how. But if you need the more complicated engagement, then they obviously consult you for those hours, obviously then virtually potentially as well. So I've seen some amazing examples of, and in fact, I'm actually busy working on one of my own at the moment around sort of sales and so on. Sort of being able to, how do you sell? How do you, as an entrepreneur, how do you actually generate revenues? And selling is key to that. And there's a lot of sort of traditional sales, second-hand car salesman, with all the greatest respect type approaches, and there's a new approach that one can take to that. To actually, how do you approach? How do you sell yourself? How do you sell your business? How do you sell your product offering? And so I've sort of done a lot of exploratory work in that space more recently, and I think it's, as a consultant, whether it's legal, consulting services, whatever it is, thinking cleverly about how to package that, it can be a massive unlock and actually potentially even take you global. So if anyone wants to chat about that directly, I'm more than happy to share some of those learnings, but that would be my thought. Yeah.
So that's great. Daniel and Loretta, I think you answered that super well. So Daniel, there's this new opportunity to create incredibly compelling content via various platforms that you can either buy or consume that can lead into somebody wanting to book consultation or buy hours. And then Loretta, you're saying just make sure you got the back end that facilitates that, because people want to consume and book online seamlessly, not necessarily phone up, send an email, try to get hold of somebody. Why do you think that bigger ticket items such as vehicles and property haven't really started to migrate towards selling online? Yet, yes, there are listings for leads, but it's not sales. Technology has made this more possible, and we can see the international market starting to make those moves, and we can see buyers are willing to take the chance on it. Why hasn't the local market starting to wake up to e-commerce?
Can I jump in on that one? Because I've got a bit of a funny story. When lockdown began, if you all remember the journey, that government said only essential things can be bought. And then it was e-commerce, no, we can't do it. And only to find out, because the government then contacted us as the EFSA to say, you guys speak for the industry, can we speak to you guys? Only to find that they honestly didn't understand what e-commerce was themselves. So as we move in e-commerce, the plug and plays are also becoming sophisticated. Artificial intelligence is one aspect that people don't talk about yet. It sounds a bit more complex. Virtual reality is ultimately how these things can actually happen. So virtually sampling a car from the seat of your couch is how you're going to sell your cars. So you have a virtual tour of the actual vehicle itself from your couch, so you don't have to physically go anywhere. And that type of conversation is happening in an electronic digital environment. So we just because we're catching up with e-commerce, we're still at the start of understanding how it can actually incorporate other technologies to make it possible to sell things virtually that you physically, would normally just sample.
Yeah, fantastic. Daniel, what are your thoughts? Why are people not buying and selling cars and property online yet in South Africa?
Yeah, my view on this is it's just an evolution. I think we saw this ourselves, in the e-commerce space, right? If prior to 2010 or 11, very few people had bought stuff online, and the reason for that is that number one, trust in the platform, right? So I go, back then it was Kalahari, whatever. I'd go online, I'd have to buy a TV. It's a couple of £1,000, if not tens of thousands of rand. It's I've got to put my card into this online thing. I've never done that before. Am I actually going to get that item after I paid for it? And actually, by the time I thought about all that, it's easier just to go down the road and buy it from the shop. I think one of the things that we saw, and really one of the reasons why the Groupon model was so successful, was that barrier to entry was radically low. It was a couple of £100, and and that got a lot of people engaged in online and actually purchasing online, trusting the fact that they can put their credit card details or card details or bank details into this thing, and they're going to get something out the other side. And so, my view on this is quite simply that, obviously the bigger the ticket, the bigger the price, the bigger the ticket the item is, the more trust you're going to have. And that comes with time, it comes with word of mouth, it comes with people doing it. And it's just a matter of time. So, I think to some degree, some of this has already been started. I mean, in a very small way, locally. It's barely started, but, it's human behavior, right? I'm not going to go and spend a couple of hundred or million rand online, do a sort of transaction online for a house or car, whatever it might be. It's just a trust. I want to see it. I want to feel it. I want to, but as these things become more commoditized and as there are more options, and as I realize that actually potentially I can look at multiple different options for the same car, I can get better pricing if I do it online. The website provides me a guarantee that if I'm not happy, I can return the car, whatever the case is. All of this changes. So it's really just a matter of time, I'd say.
Yeah. 100%. I agree with you, Daniel. I think these things will eventually convert. And I think particularly once institutions that communities trust start offering these things, whether it's I trust my bank, therefore I would potentially buy through my bank, or sure, as institutions change where they're able to generate the trust, I think we'll see the uptake far more vigorously. Yeah. Right. We have one last quick question before we sign off for the day. And that's a question from someone saying, which platforms would be good for e-learning platform development? Now, just a shout out to everyone who's still online. One of our workshops in this series focuses on business tools and platforms, and we will be addressing e-learning platforms in that session. But Loretta, Daniel, do you have any experience, advice with this?
Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to throw a few names around. I mean, so think if let me actually just put it in the chat. Is quite an interesting one. That's so just purely e-learning stuff. It's quite a commonly used one and quite an interesting sort of marketplace or platform to use. But I mean, there's Teachable. There's quite a few out there. I would just really just do a search online. But think if from what I understand, is sort of getting quite a bit of following, and they've built some interesting tools around it, and it's quite easy and user-friendly. So maybe one to try. But a quick search online, I think, would probably give you a whole list of them.
Yeah, Loretta?
Yeah, again, it comes back with doing homework. And I agree with Daniel's. Quick searches, yes, but in-depth searches as well, because just because we're in e-commerce, we should not forget our marketing tool. We need to go back again. We shouldn't throw away our marketing 101 knowledge. It still applies in e-commerce. So, there is no best platform for everyone. So we need to know more specifics about what type of e-learning are you talking about? Who's your target audience? Is it the students? Is it the actual parents? What level of education are you talking about? And what level of knowledge does the actual e-learner need to have before they can even interact with you? So there is no best platform. There's a best platform for you. So do the research to find out once you know your business plan.
Oh, I love that. Let's end off on that note. The best platform for you. And I think that's correct. Daniel, Loretta, thank you for your time. I know these things don't go without a lot of effort and energy, and it's much appreciated. Not only are you helping the people who joined real time today, but this recording is going far and wide. So I really appreciate the time and the energy on behalf of the SA UK Tech Hub and the Loudhailer. Thank you. Right, everyone else, the next workshop will be happening on the 28th of October, 2020. We will be hosting a workshop on your digital marketing strategy, of which I think there's always a huge amount of interest. If you have any questions, please make sure you email virtual@theloudhailer.org. We'd be happy to help you with any of your requests relating to this workshop or building your business further. Right, thank you everybody. We hopefully see you at the next session. Thank you, Daniel. Cheers everyone. Bye, Loretta.